All right, welcome to another Data Hurdles. I'm Chris Detzel, and
Michael Burke, how you doing, Chris?
pretty good. How about you?
Good. I know this is a data talk, but I want to say that I was checking out your DFW running group website, and it is pretty amazing what you've been able to do with ChatGPT over the course of the last couple weeks. Like, I feel every week it completely changes.
It's Claude, by the way. So before we'll go into that in a minute, but before we do, I want to introduce Matthew Cox. He's the Chief Data Officer at Fusable. Matthew, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Happy to be here today. Good to see you guys again.
Yeah, you too. And Michael, it's using Claude 3.7 now, so I don't use ChatGPT. Claude is just known to help you code basic stuff. I'm now a coder, Matthew. What do they call it now? A vibe coder. Is that right?
Twitter, that's a
Yeah.
new thing. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a good thing, and coders don't like that. I posted something on one of these forums and they just tore me up. Anyway,
Well, hey, listen, the day you have a cycling group, Chris, we should talk because
yeah,
that's
There you go.
yeah,
it's
I
the
thought
running.
about it.
If bikes involved, then I'm as good as there.
That's interesting. So maybe we'll do that. And I know you're a big cyclist. So today, instead of talking about my website, let's talk about you, Matthew. Last time we spoke it feels like a long time ago, especially on data hurdles. You've now moved positions. You're now the chief data officer at Fusable. How's that going?
It's going great. It's been 6 months now, and I'm really enjoying the journey that we're on. It's about a lot of transformation and enabling a set of capabilities for our customers that I think will really deliver a set of value that they've not seen before. And so I'm really, with the capabilities we have, with the technology plan that we have in place, I think we're going to see this company really do something amazing in the marketplace, and I'm excited to be here for the ride.
Tell us a little bit about Fusable, what they do before we just dive right in.
So Fusable actually we were formed from the divestiture from a company called Randall Riley and a series of acquisitions that were made, product acquisitions, company acquisitions. We've really stood up the multitude of actually multiple independent product lines that we're seizing together, bringing together to deliver what we call vital data to services in vital industries. And those vital industries would be agriculture, construction, trucking, industrial, but really we're trying to deliver a set of services that spanned data, analytics, and digital. And I think that's one of the things that really drove my interest in Fusable was we wasn't just a data company, right? We're actually bringing together full digital core media brands. We have core media brands for agriculture, construction, and trucking. We have digital services, so we can actually run campaigns of digital capabilities against all of our data. So the breadth that this company represents within the industry is really unique and amazing as we look to deliver solutions across what we term as these vital industries. And so that's what's exciting to me is taking some really amazing independent products that have been brought together and then looking at how do we create a unifying connected data strategy that harnesses all of that media and digital knowledge together in one package and then serve that up for amazing solutions to our customers.
So cool. And I know that we talked about this a little bit. These industries don't, it's not like the industries that you've worked in with Google and that I'm in right now at Databricks or Zoom Info. These guys have very limited data sources. And this is a new frontier in many ways with some of I think we call it like hard tech industries, but areas that don't have access to the same kind of data sources. They're not using like the live ramps and the DMBs the same way that the type of data sources that Fusable will provide. Is that right?
That is correct. And I think that's where there's really a need in these industries for a data partner. And not really just a data partner, but a solution partner, right? I think that's really what we're serving up from a capability standpoint is to be able to leverage our knowledge and skill with data and digital. And now, of course, as you guys know, one of my favorite topics is AI to help really establish a technological presence within these industries and help them become more efficient with it as customers in the processes that they're undertaking.
And so in these verticals, what kind of questions are folks asking? What are they hiring you and Fusable for today?
Well, there's two. What I do is when you think about all those different verticals, right? Then you have customer segments that go into that, but then we narrow it down to use cases. So I actually say we probably have four specific use cases I'll call out. Number one is sales and marketing, right? So we have a sales and marketing use case. We have a risk management use case. Then we have the digital, right? So I'll call out digital as a use case as well. And that getting to our digital audience, whether it's through media or through digital campaigns. And then fourth, we've really put a lot of energy around professional services now because we're really trying to not only, it's one thing, as you guys know, to deliver product and create a solution or create a partnership with a customer, but it's another one to actually help them leverage your product more effectively internally. And so we're wanting to help become that glue, that accelerator. One of the things we've talked a lot about in the past is time to value. I'm a big proponent of time to value. We believe that there's a really great opportunity for us to help our customers really accelerate that time to value and shrink that amount of time. And so that's the 4 areas we're focusing on. But from a sales and marketing standpoint, whenever there's we'll call it an asset. So we have two terms we'll talk a little about. One is it's an entity, right? So the typical company, right? We talk about master data management company, right? So you have a company that then has an asset, and that asset would be, say, a tractor, or it could be a truck, right? So when someone finances a new truck or someone purchases a new truck or a new asset, that's information that companies in all of these different verticals want to know about, right? It can become a sales and marketing activity. It can become an insurance activity. And there's a number of things that triggers. So we'll say transactional data that we collect that then triggers activities that our customers want to know about so that they can then follow up on it.
Very interesting. So is it more geared towards the sellers of these added services and added technologies to the individual who's making a purchase, or is the data to the individual's company?
So it's more of the former, right? So what'll happen is, let's say I go to a dealership today and I buy a new tractor, right? I get it financed. That's one of the ingestion points. So what other dealers or other companies in that industry would like to know is, okay, now there's service plans. There could be additional components. They could look at it and say, okay, hold on. They just purchased that. You kind of think about like even a lease with automobiles, right? Someone purchased it. We have that tracking. We know probably in 3 years, they're going to want to get out of that vehicle. They're going to change out or sell that tractor or that asset. And so that now becomes an opportunity that they can follow up going forward. And from an insurance standpoint, you could say, if I'm an insurance company and I have a relationship with that company, I'm seeing that they're buying more vehicles right now. I now understand the broader risk that I have potentially with that entity or that organization. So that helps me from an underwriting standpoint. So these transactions become both an action that can be followed up on, but also becomes part of a longer set of detailed history. And we have years and years of all these transactions and all this stuff. So now insight becomes a very valuable part that we can provide as well.
That's so interesting. I actually was looking at buying a tractor at one point, and I did something very similar, not very similar, but I went on to, I think it's Iron Planet, one of the big used resellers of tractor equipment.
Yep.
And I dumped all their data into a database and then built like a mini, what are the box and whiskers of what should I be spending on a tractor? I know nothing about farm equipment, but I think that when you talk about these service industries, even at larger scale, my dad was a builder and a contractor, and now he's in manufacturing. They track very little information, and making decisions about how to grow their business, how to market to others. It's not just individual businesses, but the whole ecosystem is very like not data driven today.
You're absolutely correct. And I think that's, again, if I'm in construction, I'm worried more about the construction project in front of me and not going out to market my services and everything else. So that's where the digital side of our business comes into play, because they can leverage all those digital assets, but then also they have access to all the data that we have as well. And so one of the challenges for us has been, when you think about anytime you go through an acquisition process and you're buying additional companies, the merging of that entity, that organization, and their data is always one of the biggest challenges you have. And so that's one of the areas that we're putting a lot of data transformation around today, is we're taking all of those silos of organizations, platforms, and products. And there's a number of products we have. There's one called CAB, we have one's EDA, Rig Dig, Equipment Watch, etc. So we have all these really amazing products that we've put in place. Now we're taking all of that data and bringing it together in that connected data strategy. So the idea of saying, if I understand company ABC in one regard, now look at all of these additional areas of activity and knowledge that I can now bring together into one fold and represent that out to my customers. And so connected data is a really big part of our priority initiatives that we have underway.
I have a quick question. My uncle owns, and his brothers, it used to be called, and it's in Roy City, Texas.
Roy City, yes. No.
Yep, I'm sure you do. You know all those little cities, or it's not little anymore. But they own New Holland Tractor. So they've owned, it used to be called Ford Brothers Ford, but they have two. One is in Terrell, and then one is in Roy City. Roy City being would this company use your data, or would it be more of the finance companies that would use that data? So I'm just trying to understand.
Actually, it could be both, but absolutely the New Hollands, the Kubotas, the John Deeres, the Cases, all of them would absolutely be customers of our data. That is correct.
Okay.
And it could be dealerships, or it could be the OEMs themselves, right? It's really both, because the information we have can really enable an OEM, so say an original equipment manufacturer, but also then the dealerships that are now trying to look at the various types of products they're trying to sell. Now, just like you talked about Mike, from a use standpoint, we actually have a product called Iron Guides, which gives prices, right? It's like a price guide. Think of KBB or NADA.org or those other organizations where it actually gives you a pricing. We actually give pricing on those type of assets or units.
Hey, Matt, I think we lost you there for a moment. I'm not sure if anyone
You look
else.
great, guys. You look great. I see you rocking and rolling.
Okay, good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean,
Did you hear the point about the Iron Guides and conversation about what Iron Guides provides? Because to your point of pricing, that's a great question. So if I'm a dealer and I'm trying to understand what I should price a piece of equipment at, I need a comparable, right? So this is what's really great about our Iron Guides tool too.
it is so interesting, and I feel like these industries specifically are so underleveraged in how they're capturing data. And I know that the John Deeres of the world are starting to do a lot more of the predictive maintenance kind of pieces on the actual devices themselves, but nobody is really assessing the market in that, in the way that you're looking at this data. How are you convincing the retailers, the insurers, and these different large businesses, how are you educating them on this is the right path forward and this is how you're going to make more informed decisions? I'm sure there's a lot of education that goes into a product like this, right?
There is, and I think it's the good thing about our products, specifically CAB, EDA, and these others. They've been around. They've been in the industry for a long time. They actually have been a standard, right? They are the standard tool for them to go leverage. So we have a great reputation and great products that have been in the industry for some time. They're being leveraged. I think the question that I would say is really the next step, right? We start talking about the connected data, we start talking about insights, right? And the one things that we've talked about in the past, predictive, prescriptive actions that would come from analytics. To me, that's the real area of next step growth to help them understand is, okay, it's one thing to receive this information that we can send you this transactional data that we receive and information we receive from various sources. But really the next step is let's help you understand what those next trigger events should be. How should you look at the broader, say, area or the broader type of vehicles or assets or whatever that you're trying to monitor? So I think that insight is that insight driven. So it's one thing to be data driven. It's another one to be insight driven. And so we've been helping them drive from a data standpoint and how they should act and respond. Now the next step is really to help them understand the insights we'll provide and how they should be now making decisions on a broader set of information, both from breadth and depth, historical and across, to drive that next series of decisions they should be making.
Yeah,
So
it's so
like,
interesting.
go ahead.
I
No,
was just going to,
quickly. I was just going to say that sale has to be a little bit different than your normal B2B type of sale. You go into a dealership, for example, and these guys are in the middle of nowhere selling tractors and stuff like that. So it's a different clientele. They're smart, all these things. It's not the same type of sale, like just
And I think that's that their technology is varying. I think that's part of it as well. You have to meet them where they're at. But it's not too dissimilar than a lot of any type of B2B organization that you'd actually be working with. Their need for sales, their need for prospecting, their need for list marketing, their need for information, understand where that. So when you break it down to, again, that's why I tend to break it down into the use cases. The use cases aren't that dissimilar, really, because at the end of the day, there's a sales and marketing play. They've got to bring in leads. They've got to understand, tell me what the prospects are out there. Let me look at a broad area. I may be a dealership wanting to move into, say, Texas, and I don't have any presence there. Let me look at how broad the activity is within Texas. And where should I open up in Dallas? Should I open up in Austin? Should I open in Houston? So these are the type of things that I think are really valuable to help them think of those next series of decisions they need to make as an organization. Really, use case, the sales and marketing use case spans all the industries. It's really at the end of the day, just the type of data you're serving up to them. In our case, we have to really have an amazing set of information that we can drive these particular verticals with that use case.
so how did you get involved in this coming from Google, right? This
Yeah.
massive, completely different ecosystem.
Mike, it's because he owns his own farm and he does all these data things around his farm. And he thought, this is going to be a great company for me to work with. I do data and hey, be a CDO. It's perfect. No, go ahead.
So I think it is different, but what's interesting is the challenge of these industries are very similar at the end of the day. If you're looking at, if you take data, and I think it's important for me to reiterate that I'm in a unique CDO role because it's not just about data. So I'm responsible for product, for data, for engineering, for our cybersecurity, so our InfoSec, all of our enterprise apps, and then also the areas of professional services that we're getting ready to invoke and deliver as well. So I really have one of the things that was really interesting to me about in particular Fusable was the ability for me to see the full breadth of data. So typically in a lot of areas I've been involved in, it's either been product or it's been corporate data. And at Fusable, I'm actually responsible for the entire set of data across the organization, which for me is really intriguing. But the other part that I really enjoy is, and I think you alluded to this, the technology landscape, because having obviously running a ranch and being familiar with that industry, there was such an opportunity for growth and leverage of what technology and what data insights, what sort of new things that are being delivered today, how they can take advantage of it. It's exciting for me to see an industry really grow and take advantage. I think there was an insight that I had obviously from Google that allows me to really help provide a vision and a guidance into this realm that they can take advantage of. So that for me was what was really exciting. And really, when you deal with smaller organizations, the ability to bring data, product, and engineering all together is fairly unique. In a lot of organizations, those are separate, completely separate, and they have to work in parallel. In this case, the vision gets to unite all three of those together, which is really, for me, an exciting step because it drives product velocity.
Amazing. It's such a, to me, I think this is such an interesting area because up until I would say a few years ago, I knew nothing about really the agricultural space or manufacturing space. My wife's in manufacturing, and I never realized that when you invest in a piece of equipment, that is the business. Like you are putting your entire equity, everything
That's
that
right.
you've saved into that next piece of equipment. And if you're a seller of those pieces of equipment, you might only sell one every 10, 15 years to that customer. So you really have to know the market landscape, who's buying, what's happening in that space, and also economic indicators that to do that could be a profession in itself. And so I really think it's interesting with Fusable that it sounds like that's the direction that you're heading, is providing more holistic
Yes.
information along with the individual data points that somebody would use to make smaller decisions within their ecosystem.
Yeah, because you're right, because there's cycles. It's a cyclical nature to like most industries where the pricing will go up, the pricing will go down. To try and understand what those wavelengths look like is an area of value that we can bring. 'Cause at the end of the day, our desire is to make every one of our customers as successful as possible. So give them information about what's happening in their particular area of focus, give them perspective on what that means across a timeline, and then as much as we can forecast out what we believe what that's going to look like in the future. Because that, to your point, these are heavy investments, right? And we want to make sure they're able to get to leverage those as much as possible within their industry.
So I'm curious. So we now know a lot about Fusable. Really cool company, really cool stuff. And I want to talk more about your role. And what is, you own a lot of different things. You said, what are the things you're working on, the things that you're doing, and what's some passion that you're having right now or some focus? And what are you passionate about is really kind of what I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of passions, right? So it actually is multifold. So it's passion in a number of things. So I think from my standpoint, I have a great appreciation for how all these pieces come together, right? So I've talked in the past about the need for data quality, right? The need for data governance and the need for being able to provide a framework for that. We've got our friends, our common friends like Scott Taylor and others, right? That talk about it's just but the data. And I think one of the things that I'm particularly excited about is a few parallel paths that we have, right? So number one is really getting our arms around on the data itself. So I talked about that connected data strategy, right? But then understanding within that, what is the framework to ensure that data quality is at the forefront of our concern? And that can be in a number of things, right? Whether that's observability or explainability, or looking at how we're common and consistent ingestion that we begin to put into the engine. So I think that's a big part for me about data is really getting our arms around how do we provide the most robust and most well-honed and best standardized data. We actually call it core data, our core data set that we can bring to the table. And so to me, that's exciting because the first part of it, because trust and value is a big part in my mind of how we bring ourselves to the table with our customers. Trust that we're doing everything we can to build the best data set possible, but then value that we're actually delivering capabilities that help them actually move their business forward. So from a data standpoint, it's really getting our arms around that robust and rigorous environment. From a product standpoint, product velocity is a big part for me. Really giving our customers, our sales teams, and our customers the ability to have multiple ways in which they can engage with our data, right? So it's not like your typical, I have a data organization, I drop a file off to a company and just say, hey, go off and have fun and talk to me in 6 months if you figured out how to use our file, right? We're building common canonical services. We're building new end products, right? So there's really two types of end products. There's one which is a Fusable environment that's our standard platform that's unique and specific to make available, but then also looking at platform native systems, right? So if we want to introduce an applet into Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or another area where, again, the idea is with product is to really focus on that moment of truth, right? Where is the point where our customer exists, where they need our data to be in order to make a decision. Right? I want to be as close to that moment as possible so that we're delivering the highest value and that they're not having to leave their environment, then come back and figure out how to work with Fusable. And so really infusing ourselves into that arena. And I think that's particularly important from a product standpoint. But then from an engineering standpoint, one of the things we've talked about is a microservices architecture, right? And really building reusable components and creating an environment where we can very quickly build a variety of capabilities. If you think about Lego blocks, right? You can, in the same Lego set, you can build a TIE fighter, an X-Wing fighter, you can build all sorts of different things, right? Just depending on how you assemble them. And so the idea from an engineering standpoint is we're building a robust stack that allows for these small components to be assembled very quickly into new products, which to me builds on that product velocity view. And when on top of that, I talked about being responsible for our information security. We have to wrap everything with a security first priority, right? When you're dealing with device to cloud, right, you really have to build a robust environment that your customers can have faith in, and then trust that once they give you their data, that whole transaction is secure and safe for them. And so that's a piece that I felt was very important to wrap. So if you think about those three pillars of data, product engineering, wrapped with security, I think is a great message to bring out to our customers and say, listen, we're as concerned about your data as you are, and making sure that in our negotiation, our relationship, it's safe. And so those things really for me are important. And then if you think about then taking that robust environment and adding our AI spin, how do I now enable machine learning and reinforced learning? How do I look at potentially agentic AI to start to actually have run transactions, actually begin to do specific roles? For me, builds a value proposition that's very, very strong over the next and upcoming years. So to me, those were all very important pieces that we need to establish and things that we will feel in our roadmap are very important for us as a company to move forward with.
I heard the term, just this recent that I've started hearing the term agentic AI. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it feels like another buzzword, an important one that we
It
need to know
sounds like
about.
another buzzword. So they just had to have another AI thing. But yeah, let me talk about that for a second because I'm actually really energized about agentic AI.
Yeah. A
You
lot of
hear
people are, obviously.
it's because so what's important for me is a couple things. Number one, we've talked about LLMs for a long time. We've talked about our AGI, artificial generative intelligence, right? So we talked about all that work, right, that has the process of you developing human type capabilities. I mean, you can ask it a question like ChatGPT, it gives you an answer back. All that's great. And I think there's some things we can build upon. But what is, I think, actionable now is our ability to put this, what we call this agentic AI or AI for use of us in very specific roles, right? So think about if I have someone that's trying to perform a task that I now need to automate. So agentic AI automates that role. And what's really cool about agentic AI is that I can leverage ML, right? So I can have reinforced learning that helps me make a decision. But more importantly, I can place that against even my existing capabilities. So say my existing APIs, my existing capabilities and pros. Agentic AI doesn't have to have ML or AGI or anything else to operate, right? It allows you to actually say, I have a role or a function I need to play, say customer service. And that agentic AI role can actually now begin to perform all those functions and decisions that someone in customer service would be performing. And so I think that's where we can talk a lot about the future of ML and what it does in the future of AGI, et cetera. But what's actionable today, I believe, is agentic AI. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can put that to work as products, but also internal, right? You can think about processes that you'd run internally, right? There's things you'd even do internally as a company that those you can really suit up that role because its purpose is within a bounded area to make decisions, right, on behalf of the input that it's receiving. Very exciting steps, I think, for agentic AI.
I think this is one area where when we started talking about generative or general intelligence, I was like, okay, that's great, but it's going to be a long time before we get there, unless we see major strategic technical advances in the offerings that we have today. But with agentic AI, we're essentially arming or enabling AI to take action without the need for human intervention to some degree in a specialized task with controls. How do you think about Fusable and agentic AI? Are there going to be focuses on certain areas like risk modeling or deal intelligence? Where do you think that's headed in the next couple of years?
I think all of those are opportunities. And I would say, and one quick thing about agentic AI, one of the things I think is really important because we've talked about data quality over and over again. And I think that I think everyone's taking it seriously to a certain point, but then they pause because investments in data quality has always been a challenge. Even things like even MDM, you're always having to make this broad case for why you have to go and deliver these capabilities to improve data. But what I think is got to make people a little more unnerving or unnerved in this environment is the idea that I'm having agentic AI work autonomously, right? So before there was this idea that, hey, I go and build a report or I build a transaction, I've got a human standing there that can make a gut check decision. So call on this lead. I'm like, I don't know that company. I'm not really sure. I'm going to wait on that. So data didn't have to be as the bar for the level of quality of data didn't have to be as high before because you always had someone who could intervene at the moment before a decision was made. We're at the point now with that specifically as we look to agentic AI, there's not, and we've removed the intervention moment. So data quality and making sure that what you're passing into these, whether it's agentic AI or even ML as we move forward, is really important because there's not someone stopping or intervening at the moment before a decision is made. So I think data quality and the work that we're doing with our connected data strategy really, and all the frameworks and everything is really preparing us for that next mission, one way or the other. So I think it's really important people understand you can't go to agentic AI and go, oh, this is a great wizard. I'm gonna throw it out there and just start running things against it. You've really got to take very seriously what you're feeding into that and have a level of quality and assurance that you're able to deliver the right information for it to act on. So first of all, is that. So secondly, to your point on the risk. So to me, where does agentic AI actually begin to play in our future is I look at those use cases. To me, it all starts at the use case, right? So I look at sales and marketing. We'll just take two for now. I'll take sales and marketing and risk management. So within those use cases, there are personas, right? So you have people, they're actors that are performing a certain role. Any of those roles that can be mapped within those use cases, to me, is an opportunity for agentic AI to play, right? So whether it's the potential for being brokering, potentially for being inside sales, potentially for being lead acquisition, any of those personas or actors that have to take in data, make a decision, and then act, they all become potentials for agentic AI as we look forward. Then, of course, the question, Mike, would be the value prop, the trust piece. How much is an organization willing to hand off automation of those roles to an agent versus an individual or human being making those decisions? That's some of those series of steps we need to make. But at the end of the day, if you can't, when you're looking at delivering out product, you can actually scale into that discussion. Because the first thing is if your customer can't trust you to deliver insight, you'll never get to the next step, right? But if you can deliver insight, then maybe you can move into, say, predictive analytics, right? So if you can move that next step, they're like, okay, that's great. I can now trust how you predict things. Then the next step is, okay, maybe you can prescribe some behaviors that I should do or some action. So if you move to that next step of prescribing what should be done, there's another tier of trust. And then that next trust could then move you to agentic AI. If you want to go from today, which is like a transactional piece of data, to agentic AI, you've missed a series of steps of trust that you need to move through to move that point. So I do think it's a journey, Mike, that will be on, but I do think you can make steps over time to reach that point where both the value of what you're delivering and the trust that you can actually deliver can come together and meet that need.
I love it. And there's so much there that we're seeing this with a lot of customers that I work with as well. Like prescription is really the first major focal point of agentic AI. And what does that mean? It means we're going to tell you that we think you should do something, but we're not just going to recommend a action. We're going to explain to you why this action was important and how we came to the conclusion that you should take this action. And so I think of it like peer programming or having a teacher review your assignment, right? There's somebody who's going to be sitting there saying, we saw 10 other deals or 10 other claims be filed this way. And so we're going to recommend this approach. You don't have to take that information and act on it as an actuary or as whatever use case you're playing within that role. But you now have a really informed decision by someone who was able to analyze a massive amount of data that wouldn't be worth the time for you to go and investigate unless you'd worked at the company for 20 or 30 years. And that's the kind of experience that you're getting with this first step of kind of informative instruction with some reasoning behind it.
And this is where I think the value prop that Fusable brings to the table is we have 20, 30 years of data. We have 20, 30 years of being in the business in a lot of these areas. So we do have that IP that we can bring to the table that says it's not just about here's something that's happened. It's here's something that happened and let me give you context. Here's the context around that you should be perceiving, because that should then help drive. Just like we talked about the pricing, right? I've got a tractor. What pricing level should I put on it? When should I try and sell it? What's happening in the market that I should decide either to sell now or sell maybe in another quarter, depending upon when the market looks right. That context and insight, I think, is where we really bring huge value to our customers. But that moves us then toward that point of predictive, prescriptive, and then saying, hey, if you've trusted me this far, maybe you can trust me the next step of allowing an agent to actually start to have even a bigger role in that piece for you.
Yeah, I love it. The example I always like to use for folks that aren't technical on the call is like coin evaluation. When you think of like an old penny, right? And one that's worth millions of dollars. For an AI, it's what makes it valuable. Is it the year? Is it the condition? Is it what was done to it? There's so many pieces of context that some might be in structured databases, like sales of previous pennies out there, but others you need to analyze it to a specific degree that there are a lot of technologies out there, but there's also a lot of opportunity for areas where data hasn't really been captured on those areas. And agentic AI is going to get there very quickly. I think a lot faster than everybody realizes. And if you have a platform like what Fusable has, and there's many other businesses out there doing similar things in different industries, that has the dual flywheel where you have really good inputs and you have really good abilities to output, is just a recipe for success. And I think that's where any area in AI is going to blow up, is where you have that multi-facet flywheel of proprietary data. So
Well,
much value there.
yeah, I agree. But I think to the point, I think the question is, why would they trust you? So why would organizations move to that? I think it goes back to, again, being able to speak to what is the framework that I'm putting around the quality of my data? What is the observability and explainability that I have around the decisions that I'm now offering up? So as part of what we're doing as a thrust internally, is to begin to expose more and more of the work that's happening behind the scenes that we're putting in place prior to that product. Our product used to having data ready for our customer consume, right? It's easy to say, here's my UI, go use the UI, go pull information and be happy. But that doesn't build that next level of trust to say, but let me explain to you what's happening behind the scenes. Let me show you the volume of data we're bringing in. Let me explain to you the series of steps we go through in order to make that data prepared for you to consume it. Let me show you from a observability standpoint how this is all flowing through and where we're at any one point. Let me explain to you why you're seeing what you're seeing. All those series of steps and that information then begins to build that trust in, okay, it's not just the UI I'm dealing with. It's not just that piece of information that you gave me the data, but there's a whole wealth of activity that happened prior to, which is really ultimately the great value you provide. The product looks great and they interface the product, but it's all that work that goes into what's being delivered that I think is going to help customers and others really begin to trust and respect the decisions we're trying to enable for them and move to that predictive, prescriptive, agentic AI series of steps. They've got to understand what's behind and how that's serving them, I think, to be able to trust to that next step forward. So you've got to be willing to open up the curtain a little bit and let them see what's going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. How do you see that transparency evolving as the business grows and also AI grows in the industry? How vital is that to success? You guys have established a long tenure of credibility and transparency with these organizations. How do you see that taking flight in a realm of AI where explainability might become a little bit more difficult? You might need to be an expert to understand some of these things.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a couple of folds. Number one, we are creating the ability for us to have our own professional services and individuals who have that SME to walk our customers through a lot of those steps. Because your point is correct that the step between what I'm operating today and where I need to go as an organization is opaque in a lot of cases, right? And so you need almost a tour guide to walk you through those steps to say, listen, here's how you get from A to B, so you can actually start to take advantage of that. So I think part of that is incumbent on the organization like us to provide some of that expertise and enable our customers to be more effective and to understand more quickly where things are going. I think number two, simplicity. Right, be sophisticated but simple. And so I think if what you're delivering out is too sophisticated and it takes 3 months to learn it, you've probably got a problem. You probably overestimated your need to deliver the experience that's happening to that customer. So I talk a lot about being sophisticated but simple. And so that's another approach that I think we're going to be pushing through. And then I think thirdly, giving them that as much insight as you can into the work that's going on, right? So we delivering insights about how many, like from an ingestion standpoint, how many of this type of file, this type of source information did we process? How long did it take to go from here to the point you consumed it? Looking at the overall volume, I've always been a fan of, we used to call it customer intelligence, right? It was really just how you're dealing with your customer data and how you're trying to deliver information. I think it's really important as we move forward, we're asking our customers to trust us even more, to give them even more of that insight into what's happening behind the scenes. And I'm happy to give that more of that intelligence out. There's still IP. You want to keep your secret sauce, but helping them understand the results of the secret sauce is really, I think, imperative to have that trust, because we're in several areas, even at prescriptive, we're literally asking our customers to trust what we're telling them for them to go act upon. So they need to be able to trust that we're as serious about the consequences of that decision they make as they are. And so we want to make sure we're with them and have skin in the game for that knowledge that they're trying to bring to bear.
I'm very passionate about the simplicity, as you mentioned, but that's hard to do, right? Like you think about bringing data stuff to people in general, MDM, there's nothing easy about it. There's even some of the stuff that you're doing and trying to understand that. So I'm always a big fan of either building communities or programs that will help your customers get the most out of your products, because you know what, there's always more complications than you think there is for anybody. It's just the reality. The deeper you can go into showing people how to use it, what it's about, use cases and things like that, the better, because you show one person, oh, I didn't know you could do that. They just, because people, we in general just think we want this data for this, but you can actually use it for these things too. And so I'm just a big proponent of building engagement type programs that go deep into the products and show people how to use it and everything. I didn't do that necessarily with you, but I did that with your team at Google, or if they wanted to.
I think part of it's, I think there's a couple of ways of having that simple mode. I think number one, it is looking at, I talked about the moment of truth, meeting them in their natural place of work, right? So I think if you ask an individual to leave the work that they're in, say they have a CRM tool and they're used to working in that CRM tool all day long, and now they've got to leave to go find prospects, they've got to leave to go get data and then come back. You're taking them out of that natural environment. So the intent would be in a CRM, why can't I bring sales and marketing data directly into the world that they live in? So it really matches them at their point of need. So that makes it simple, right? If you define things less on, here's the breadth of what I'm doing for a data set or an industry, and you get down to, hey, let me talk to you, company A, about your use case, say sales and marketing. Let me talk about that persona, which is what you happen to be, which is a sales manager. Let me explain to you how we're helping you in that specific role. So I think if you take the message to the realm they're comfortable in, it makes it a lot, the path for them to engage is simplified versus coming in and saying, oh, I have a CRM solution. Why don't you just go engage and have fun? We try to take it to the person and make it much clearer on how can they engage. But at the end of the day, it's about the moment of truth. Can I be there can our data, can our solutions, can our insight be there at the point you need us to make a decision? Because you have to leave that environment. I've become sophisticated with a sophisticated solution. And that's not where I want to be.
This is super helpful. I am really excited to see where you go with this and following Fusable as they continue to grow and evolve. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Detzel, anything else that you'd like to ask as last questions?
No, I think that's it. Matthew, certainly appreciate you coming on. As usual, a ton of stuff about this space. We could even go deeper. I did have questions about data quality that nobody's ever solved, it seems, but we could go deeper into that at some point, because I'm very passionate about how to solve that problem of data quality and how people or companies are trying to solve that problem. We won't talk about that today. But thanks everyone for tuning in to another Data Hurdles. I'm Chris Detzel. Don't forget to rate and review us. And until next time, Matthew, thanks again.
Thank you. Appreciate it, gentlemen. We'll talk again soon.
That was excellent, man, as usual.